When people talk about grandparents, they usually picture warmth, Sunday dinners, gentle laughter, and little arms running into open hugs. That's what I thought my children would have. I thought my parents would be the same loving people who raised me, the ones who used to save half their paycheck just so I could take piano lessons or wear a proper coat to school. But the truth is, I didn't really lose my parents the day they grew old. I lost them the day they decided to choose favorites. I'm Emily, 41 years old, a single mother of two, and according to my parents, the family disappointment. My ex-husband Daniel left when our youngest Lily was barely 6 months old. He said he needed space, but what he really meant was freedom. And somehow in my parents' eyes, that failure became my identity. I've always worked first as a nurse, then later part-time at a local clinic so I could pick the kids up from school. I was proud of the stability I'd built on my own, but to my parents, especially my mother, none of it was ever enough. "Your sister managed to find a husband who takes care of her," she once said while washing dishes at my house. "You should have chosen better." Her words cut not because they were cruel, but because they came from the same mouth that used to tell me I could be anything. My sister Olivia was the successful one. Married to a banker named Brian, living in a house 3 times the size of mine, and mother to one child, their miracle baby Ethan. Ethan was born premature, and when he survived against the odds, my parents turned that story into legend. Every family gathering became about him, his milestones, his gifts, his every breath. My kids Lily and Noah learned early to sit quietly when their cousin entered the room. But I never thought my parents' favoritism would turn into cruelty. It started small little slights I tried to ignore. My mother giving Ethan the biggest slice of cake, my father insisting he sit in the special chair at dinner, or them calling him our little prince. Then it grew into things that made my stomach twist. Like the Christmas they gave him an iPad and my kids each got socks. Or the birthday where they sang happy birthday twice for Ethan because the first one wasn't loud enough for him to feel special. I told myself to let it go. They were grandparents, I reasoned. Maybe spoiling him made them feel young again. But everything changed last summer. After months of saving, I finally got a week off work and decided to take the kids to my parents' house for a small family reunion. They live 3 hours away in the same old 2-story house I grew up in. The one that smelled of cinnamon and cedar, where the floorboards creaked in rhythm with my childhood memories. We arrived on a Friday afternoon, and at first everything felt normal. My father helped unload our bags, and my mother hugged Lily and Noah, though her eyes drifted quickly toward the driveway, waiting for someone else. An hour later, Olivia and Brian arrived with Ethan in tow, of course. My parents' entire demeanor changed. Suddenly, the house became a stage, and Ethan was the star. Dinner that night was chaos. My mother served everyone but kept hovering over Ethan's plate, refilling it before he even asked. When Noah politely asked for seconds, she said, "Save some for your cousin, sweetheart. He's still growing." I caught the look on Noah's face, that small, forced smile that kids wear when they're trying not to cry. Later that evening, when the kids were in the living room watching a movie, I overheard my mother whispering to Olivia in the kitchen. "She really shouldn't have brought them here for the whole week," she said. "It's too much. Ethan needs quiet to rest." I froze in the hallway. Too much, my kids. The same grandchildren she'd once begged to babysit. I wanted to walk away, pretend I hadn't heard, but something in me snapped. I stepped into the kitchen and said, "If it's such a problem, maybe we shouldn't have come." My mother's face went pale, but Olivia just smirked. "Don't be so sensitive, Emily. Mom's just worried about Ethan." Worried. That word again, the one that excused everything. That night I lay awake in the guest room, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioner and my kids' soft breathing beside me. I promised myself I wouldn't let them see how much this hurt. But the next morning that promise was broken. I was making breakfast when my mother came in, wringing her hands the way she always did when she was about to say something unpleasant. "Emily," she began softly, "I've been thinking, maybe it's better if you and the kids go home early. Ethan isn't sleeping well and all the noise isn't helping." I froze. "Noise? They're children, Mom. They're playing." "I know, sweetheart, but you understand he's delicate." Delicate. As if my children were hurricanes and he was glass. I tried to stay calm. "We came here because you invited us." She sighed like I was being unreasonable. "I think it's for the best." Olivia and Brian agree. I stared at her, waiting for my father to step in to defend us. But he didn't. He stood by the window sipping coffee, pretending not to hear. So I packed our bags. Lily didn't understand. Mom, did we do something wrong? She asked, her big brown eyes brimming with confusion. I wanted to tell her the truth, that love isn't always fair, that sometimes family hurts you the most, but all I said was no, baby. Sometimes people just forget what matters. We left that afternoon. My parents didn't walk us out. As we drove away, I saw Ethan playing in the yard, my parents standing behind him clapping as he kicked a ball. My heart clenched. That used to be Noah. That used to be Lily. That used to be me. When we got home, the silence was heavy. The kids didn't talk much, and neither did I. I tried to focus on work, on routine, on pretending that their rejection hadn't carved something hollow inside me. But something shifted after that. I stopped calling as often. I stopped sending pictures of the kids. Birthdays went by without visits. It wasn't anger, it was self-preservation. Until one day, 3 months later, the phone rang. It was Olivia. Her voice was trembling. Emily, she said, Mom and Dad need you. Ethan's in the hospital. I froze, the words echoing in my ear like a sound I couldn't quite process. Ethan, the golden boy, the child they had built their world around. What happened, I asked, though my voice came out in a whisper. Olivia's tone cracked. Pneumonia. It got bad fast. He's in intensive care. Mom's losing it. Dad won't leave the waiting room. They asked for you. For me? The irony almost made me laugh. After everything they'd said, after pushing me and my kids away, now they remembered my name. But my heart still clenched. Ethan was just a child, innocent in all of this. He didn't ask to be placed on a pedestal. Within an hour, I was driving to the hospital, my hands trembling on the wheel. Lily and Noah sat in the back, quiet, sensing something serious. When we arrived, the sky was gray, the kind of color that hangs over you like grief. I found my parents in the pediatric wing, sitting on a bench outside a closed door. My mother's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. My father's hand rested stiffly on his knee, unmoving. When my mother saw me, she stood as if unsure whether she had the right to. Emily? She started, her voice breaking. Where's Olivia? I asked. She's inside with him. I nodded. I should have felt vindicated, a part of me wanted to. But seeing my mother's trembling hands, I couldn't. Some wounds were too deep to celebrate over. Can I see him? I asked. She nodded quickly, relief flooding her eyes as though my presence meant something sacred again. Inside the room, the air was sharp with antiseptic and quiet except for the steady beep of machines. Ethan lay small beneath the blanket, his chest rising shallowly, a tube tracing from his arm. Olivia sat at his side, her fingers clutching his tiny hand. When she looked up at me, her expression flickered. Shame, pride, exhaustion all at once. He asked about you, she said softly. He said he missed Noah and Lily. That broke something in me. I reached for his hand. It was warm but weak. Hey, buddy, I whispered. You're going to be okay. Your cousins are waiting to play when you get better. His eyes fluttered, a faint smile forming before he drifted back to sleep. I stood there for a while, just watching him breathe. When I walked out, my father was still on the bench. His eyes met mine, the first real look we'd shared in months. There was no authority in his gaze anymore, no judgment, only a quiet kind of surrender. Thank you for coming, he said simply. I didn't come for you. I replied, my voice gentle but steady. I came for him. He nodded, eyes lowering. I know. The next few days blurred together, hospital coffee, late-night check-ins, awkward silences that softened into brief, tentative words. My kids came by, too. Lily brought Ethan a card with clumsy hearts drawn in red crayon. Noah sat by his bedside and told stories to make him laugh. My mother cried more than I'd ever seen. Once late at night, she sat next to me in the waiting room and said, "You're a better mother than I ever was." I didn't answer. The words hurt not because they weren't true, but because they were too late. Ethan recovered slowly. After a week, his fever broke and the doctors said he'd be fine. Everyone exhaled at once. My parents hugged each other like survivors of a storm. For the first time in years, they looked small, human, not the untouchable figures who'd once ruled my childhood. When we finally left the hospital, my mother insisted I come home with them. Just for dinner, she said, please. I hesitated, but Lily tugged my sleeve. Can we, Mom? Grandpa said he's making pancakes for dinner. I smiled faintly. Pancakes, my childhood favorite. The same dish Dad used to make when life felt too heavy. So I said yes. When we arrived, the house looked the same, old family photos lining the hallway, the faint smell of coffee in the air, but something was different. The tension was gone, replaced by something quieter, something raw. At dinner, my mother sat between my kids, serving them first. She smiled when Lily said thank you, and laughed when Noah asked for seconds. My father kept the conversation light, asking about school, about their friends, about their favorite movies. It should have felt warm, but my guard stayed up. Years of pain don't dissolve in one meal. After dinner, when the kids went upstairs to play, my father cleared his throat. Emily, he began, his voice rough. We owe you an apology. My mother's eyes filled again. We were wrong. About everything. I didn't say anything. I just stared at them, two people who had once been my heroes and had turned into strangers. We thought we were doing what was best, my father continued. Protecting family, supporting Olivia. But we forgot that family isn't about choosing who shines the brightest. It's about standing beside each other when everything else falls apart. My mother reached for my hand. We hurt you. We hurt your children, and I'll never forgive myself for that. For a moment, all I could hear was the old clock ticking on the wall, the same one that had echoed through my childhood home like a heartbeat. I took a deep breath. Do you know what hurt the most? I asked softly. It wasn't that you chose him over us. It was that you made my children feel unworthy of love. My mother covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. I know, she whispered, I know. I stood up, walking toward the old photo cabinet by the window. There was a picture of Ethan framed in gold, but beside it, there were none of Lily or Noah, not one. So I took a photo from my purse, one of my kids smiling at the park, and set it beside his. There, I said quietly, now it's fair. My father nodded, his eyes glistening. It should have always been that way. That night when we left, my mother hugged me for a long time. She didn't say goodbye. She just whispered, I'll do better. As we drove home, Noah looked out the window and said, Grandpa made me laugh again. Do you think he still loves us? I glanced at the rearview mirror, his innocent eyes watching mine. Yes, I said. I think he finally remembered how. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end. Because forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't a single act, it's a process. And though they had said all the right words, I couldn't forget the years of silence, the birthdays missed, the memories stolen. Still, a small part of me hoped they truly meant it. That maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real. But the universe wasn't done testing that hope. Because 2 months later, my mother called again, her voice shaking. Emily, she whispered, it's happening again. Olivia needs help. And your father, he's made a decision you won't like. My stomach sank as soon as she said it. Her voice carried that same nervous tremor I'd learned to recognize, the tone she used whenever she was about to defend something indefensible. What decision? I asked, my throat tightening. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. Your father, he decided to let Olivia and Ethan move back in. Just for a while, she said quickly, as if rushing through the sentence might soften it. Brian left them. She has nowhere else to go. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady my heartbeat. So you're letting them stay there? That's fine. What does that have to do with me? Another pause. Then softly, we were hoping you and the kids could stay somewhere else, just until things settle. For a moment I thought I'd misheard. Excuse me. Emily, please, she said, her voice breaking. You know how your father is. He just wants to give Olivia space to recover. Ethan's had a hard time. Had a hard time, I snapped. Mom, do you realize what you're saying? You're asking me to move my children out of their grandparents' house again because your favorite daughter needs space. Her silence was deafening. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You said things would change. You said you'd do better. I meant it, she whispered. I do, but your father. Your father, I repeated bitterly. It's always him, isn't it? You never stop him. You never tell him he's wrong. You just stand there and let him decide whose love matters and whose doesn't. I ended the call before she could reply. My hands were trembling, and I could feel old anger bubbling to the surface, the kind I thought I'd buried after that hospital night. When Lily walked into the room a few minutes later, holding her drawing pad, she noticed my expression right away. Mom, are you okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, sweetheart, just grown-up stuff. But she looked unconvinced. Are we going to see Grandma and Grandpa soon? I hesitated, not for a while. She nodded quietly and went back to her room. I could hear the faint sound of crayons scratching paper, that small, innocent rhythm that used to comfort me. That night, after I put them to bed, I sat alone on the couch, staring at the framed photo I'd left at my parents' house, the one I'd placed beside Ethan's. I imagined my father's reaction when he saw it again. Did he leave it there? Or quietly remove it when no one was watching? I didn't sleep much that night, because deep down I already knew they hadn't changed. Not really. They'd apologized because they were scared, not because they were sorry. The next day, Olivia called. Her voice was polished and calm, as if the last time we'd spoken hadn't been filled with tension. "Emily," she said sweetly, "I just wanted to say thank you. Mom and Dad are being amazing. It's been hard since Brian left, but they're really helping Ethan and me get back on our feet." I didn't respond. I know things were awkward before she continued, but maybe it's time we let the past go. We're family after all. That word family made something inside me snap. "Family," I said quietly. "Is that what you call it?" Because to me, family doesn't ask one daughter to erase herself so the other can have more space. There was a long silence. Then Olivia sighed almost theatrically. "You've always been dramatic, Emily. It's why Dad never took you seriously in the first place." I didn't answer. I simply hung up. After that, I didn't hear from any of them for weeks. No calls, no texts. It was like we had ceased to exist again. But life, as it always does, kept moving. I threw myself into work, focusing on patience, on routines, on anything that reminded me that my worth wasn't defined by their approval. Until one night my phone buzzed again. It was Noah calling from his room. "Mom?" He whispered. "Grandma's at the door." My stomach dropped. When I opened it, my mother was standing there, drenched from the rain, her hair sticking to her face. She looked years older than the last time I'd seen her. In her hand was a small box wrapped in a towel. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I nodded. She stepped inside, dripping onto the floor. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she held out the box. "It's your father," she whispered. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What?" "He had a stroke," she said, her voice trembling. "It happened last week. He didn't make it. He asked me to give this to you." I sank into the couch, staring at the small wooden box, the kind he used to keep his tools in when I was a child. My mother's sobs filled the room, soft and broken. "I wanted to call," she continued, "but Olivia said you wouldn't come. She said you'd moved on." I opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were photographs, old, faded, some I hadn't seen in decades. Me as a little girl sitting on his shoulders. Him teaching me how to hold a wrench. My first school recital. And beneath those photos was a folded letter. It was written in his handwriting, firm, deliberate, but shaky at the edges. "Emily, I was wrong more times than I can count. I thought love meant control, that power meant protection. I didn't realize I was protecting myself from my own fears of losing, of failing, of being less than the father I wanted to be. When you stopped trying to please me, I called it rebellion. But it was courage. I just didn't see it then. Take care of your children. Raise them to know they never have to earn love. That's what I wish I'd told you when you were young, your old man." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My mother reached for my hand, her grip trembling. "He kept that letter by his bed. He was going to send it, but..." She couldn't finish. I wiped my eyes. "Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner?" She shook her head, guilt flooding her face. "Because I was ashamed. Because I thought if I pretended long enough, maybe I could rewrite the ending. But now I know it's too late for pretending." Lily appeared in the hallway holding Noah's hand. "Grandma," she asked softly. My mother turned to her, eyes glistening, and for a moment I saw her as the woman she once was, warm, loving, human. She knelt down and opened her arms. "Come here, sweetheart." Lily hesitated, then slowly stepped forward. Noah followed. My mother hugged them both, sobbing quietly into their hair. That night after she left, I sat on the floor beside the old box. I looked through every photo, every memory, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. I felt grief, not for what was lost, but for what never had the chance to be. I took my father's letter, folded it carefully, and placed it on my desk next to a new frame one, with a picture of my children smiling carefree. The next day I called Olivia. She didn't answer, so I left a message. "Dad's gone," I said quietly. "And whether you want to admit it or not, that changes everything. I'm not angry anymore, Olivia. I just hope one day you understand what it feels like to love someone who only sees half of you. I hope you learn from it the way I had to." I hung up and walked outside. The air was crisp, the sky clear. I looked up and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad." Then I smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because I'd finally stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. Because sometimes peace isn't found in forgiveness. It's found in letting go. If you've ever had to learn that lesson, if you've ever had to rebuild your heart after being broken by your own family, remember this. You are not defined by their blindness. You are proof that love, even when wounded, can still grow back stronger. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you've ever had to choose peace over pain.